my advice to junior chefs.
What's the deal with the banana chips?
Exactly. Just drop the ego of the chef and let it happen. I only ever really loved two things. I loved food and I loved art. The beautiful thing is that tomorrow is another day. You've really done your research.
What would be your best piece of advice for running a successful restaurant?
It's not going to be easy.
Hi, my name's Elijah and I'm the host here at AN.Told, and I'm super excited to kind of get our next guest on today who can give us a bit more of an overall insight into not just cooking, being a chef, how she's developed over her career, but also how she's had to change that mindset into more of business mindset and how that kind of reflects food while also reflecting things she's passionate about, but also providing a sense of community in place for the guests so that they can enjoy just, I guess, a sense of home and a sense of comfort and a sense of just place inside a restaurant. And I think my next guest here is done a very good job at, I guess, exemplifying how a time and place in a community can reflect that and bring people together in a nice way. So here to welcome Claire Van Vuuren, owner of Bloodwood of now 15 years, which is a huge deal, which we'll dive into later. But I want to start with a really important question, which is how important, I guess, being a chef was to her early life and how you got yourself into it, becoming a cook or a chef.
Hi Eli.
Good seeing you.
That's a good intro.
You are.
Look, you're so eloquent. You put it very nicely, the 15 years. I think it's still really important to be a chef. It's sort of in my foundation of who I am, and it runs through everything that I do. But I think throughout the years you become more savvy and realize longevity and the key to success is actually knowing how to make money or how to survive, like how to actually get the margins and all of those things in line. So after your initial passion of, this menu item, that menu item, like you're a chef yourself, you know how you want to put like all these things on the menu that we would design if we were just designing it for us, another chef, if we didn't have to pay rent, wages, all of those fixed costs, and then all of the surprise costs. There's two different paths that you'd take here. There's the one of passion and excitement and discovery and all of those things, and then there's the one that's going to keep you in the business, keep you in the game, and you learn that. So I've been fortunate enough to understand that second side, and I think that's probably key to me still being here 15 years later. I think that's the essence of it, is that you've got to balance it out. There's got to be an element of excitement and joy, and keep yourself happy in what you're doing and keep yourself stimulated, but then you've got to understand what customers want. How can you get them to return? How can you get them to spend more? All of these sorts of things. So I'm fortunate that I've kind of find that really exciting as well, trying to understand and look at the bigger picture of what is my restaurant doing, where's its place in society, how does it contribute to the community, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll dive a bit more, I guess, into Bloodwood a little bit later on, but tell us a bit more about how you got into cooking, because as we well understand it, you've got a huge passion for art, and early on you wanted to take that seriously as well. Mm-hmm. And so I know you were studying it in Sydney, and you were working at restaurants on the side, and then you found yourself in Canberra.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit kind of about that transition because I only ask because there's a huge connection between cooking and art, and that's the creativity.
Well, I think they go hand in hand. You can't separate the two. It's like, I only ever really loved two things really seriously. I loved food and I loved art. And I think my upbringing and my family always was involved in food. They were a bit more in sports, so art wasn't that much of it, but I love being creative. I love working with my hands. I can't sit behind a desk. Totally. I'm a person who needs to just make stuff. Like I'll just go to Bunnings randomly and just end up walking the aisles if I'm looking for work. Like I like practical things.
Yeah.
But I think cooking was that perfect, it sort of glued it together, the creativity, where I could make money and a living out of something that was being creative, because blending spices, blending flavors is the same as blending paints and all that sort of stuff. You still think about it, and then also the joy of it once you start to dive into it, you realize the history of cooking is just as equally as exciting as the history of art. Like there's people try and break rules, recreate things. Like it's just never ending, and it constantly changes trends and fashion and culture comes in and out. Like it's really, I don't know, it's very rewarding as a career. So I definitely don't regret moving into the cooking side. It would be great if it was a little bit more lucrative, but you know.
Do you mean art or food?
Either one. Yeah, but we sacrifice. You know.
Yeah.
I love this job, and I think I work harder than most people. Well, that's probably not true, but I work pretty hard. We do really long hours, but I really love it. I find that you make lifelong friendships. Everything about hospitality is that exact word. It's very hospitable. Like you really connect with customers, connect with staff. You're sharing a meal with someone. It's very like personal. So it's a beautiful journey to be on, I think.
And then that transition between going from art to cooking was Canberra. That was the place because you went to college.
Well, I just figured out after art school, you know, I tried to do some art stuff, and I just ended up working part-time all the time in hospitality, which you got to make money. If you live in Sydney, it's a pretty expensive town to survive, so you can't not earn anything. So I ended up moving to Canberra randomly, and then I decided, look, life's going to be cheaper there. Now's the time to just jump into apprenticeship. So I thought, going to like earn $6.95 an hour, let's do it in Canberra.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have survived in Sydney on that kind of money, because I was used to, you know, working behind bars or something. So I was earning a bit more. So I thought, now's the chance, because life will be cheaper. So I just jumped in, and I worked at a restaurant called Rubicon down there, which was a really fun restaurant. And I've still connected with some of the boys in that team. Learnt a lot. It was short and sweet, and then ended up moving back to Sydney. And I think it was in that move back to Sydney that I decided, put your head down now, like go work at one of the top restaurants, like
Claude's,
which was Claude's. And I just was committed to working, you know, I'd do 100 hours a week if it's just what you did. I just wanted to work, and I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could, because I was really enjoying it, and I was really getting into food and getting more and more excited about where it was going to go. So then I got stuck there, and that's where the journey began, I guess. It's just you got the taste for fine dining, good food, and good produce. Like Claude's used to get whole big animals, big sides of meat that were all aged and dry aged, and live marins. So it was just fun. Like every day was learning, and I kind of thought, I learned so much more at work. Like going to TAFE was like, I have to go back to TAFE. I was so much more excited at work. I shouldn't say that TAFE was boring, but
I
if
agree.
you work somewhere that excites you every day, it's not like work, it's a joy. And I worked in a small kitchen, deliberately chose to work in a small kitchen because I thought I'm slightly older than, you know, the young kids that started apprenticeships, because I had already done my 4 years at uni, and then I did a few years out. So I think I was in my mid-20s, and I wanted to work somewhere where I could watch and learn, so not only what I was doing, but learn what everyone else was doing as well. So I could sort of look around, and being in a really small kitchen, they were very generous with knowledge and sharing. And if you wanted to learn, it was, you know, endless possibilities for that. So that was exciting.
I want to jump back just a little bit here, back to the college and Rubicon days. And I ask this because for a lot of chefs starting out, the first grounding years are very make or break for chefs. And that could be just not in terms of realizing how much you want to do it, because it is hard work, but also being surrounded by the right people and how important mentors are, for example. I know for myself, when I was studying my apprenticeship at the local cafe, I wanted to become a chef. I less because I think I was so in love with food, but because the head chef who I was washing dishes for at the time, I was like 20 years old, I was just a KP, you know, humble KP. But he was so passionate about it, you know, and every day we'd come to work, he owned the cafe and he worked day, and so he was doing long days, but he was always just so invigorated with energy and love for it, and it was just funny, like, and I don't know what it was, but he just made the job of being a chef fun, you know, instead of just being belligerent or an asshole or yelling or upset or full of regret, whatever. He just really enjoyed it. He enjoyed the challenge of, you know, figuring something out or trying to make something work for the people, for the business or whatever. And I really enjoyed that mindset. So when I became an apprentice, I just wanted to absorb all that. For yourself, how important was a mentor for you? And what do you think would be good advice for young people starting out in terms of finding the right place to start?
I think it's throughout your career, you're going to change your work placement a lot. Like I think it's quite good to work in several different places, not just pick one and stay there for the rest of your career, because everywhere runs the kitchen so differently. So I think it takes you a while to figure it out. For me, I did a lot of reading and research, and I was like obsessed with the Good Food Guide every Tuesday, reading the reviews, and I was like stalking on the side through research all these other chefs that I really admired, like people like Christine Mansfield and those kind of chefs that I hadn't actually met them yet, but I just loved what they were doing and where their place in the whole sort of Australian dining scene was. So I think that was where I started first realising that you need to look up to someone to be able to get to that point. So it is, and you don't realise at the time when you work with people that they're your mentors. I think it's only when you leave later on do you realise, especially when you're initially starting out, you don't realise what you're learning. You just are stuck in the moment and you're going for it. So I think it's only through like looking back that you realise, hang on, that was such an influential place and did this and that. But having a mentor, having guidance, like at the moment in my career, I've sort of realised, and I try and give back as much. So I've constantly mentoring younger people. I'm part of the Tasting Success program through TAFE. So at the moment, I've got a really amazing mentor who's down in Wollongong, Marnie. She's amazing. So I get paired every year with a young girl that's coming through the TAFE program to sort of guide them through their thing. And sort of mentorship's not just about like practical learning, but it's also just making a friend and ally within the industry, so you can sort of go to someone for guidance. And I think that changed a lot over the years. Maybe when I started, it wasn't so open and easy to connect with people. But the beautiful thing now that 2025, like we're trying to fix the industry a lot. We're always working on it, and that's been one of the major things that has been proved is like connection to people. Reaching out, like I work with so many male mentors, and I do, people are willing to give so much back because they don't want the industry to be shat on, like they don't want it to be destroyed. Like we had a really tough patch 10 years ago where the industry was really suffering, like we were underpaying, people were overworked, exhausted, there was drugs everywhere. Like I think it's making a lot of effort and a lot of work going into just working out how to be healthier at work, happier. Overall, like you need to have work-life balance, which is something that only came into play like 10, 15 years ago. I don't think when I first started my apprenticeship that was much that we considered.
Yeah.
You worked hard, you played hard, and that was the life of a chef. And now there's kind of, you've got to have a little bit else in there to attract new people to the industry, because we were at a critical point, I think, where we weren't getting enough young people coming into the industry, because why would I work so hard and get paid such a shit amount, essentially?
$7.95.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of those minimum wages, both in front of house and back of house, have pumped up. We've worked really hard on, workplace culture to make sure that people are getting looked after. Like I think that's kind of changed a lot. And being a mentor and guiding people through that, like I've met incredible women through my career. I think maybe in 2012 I was lucky enough to be one of the chefs on Toys, which was done by Melissa Leong. She hosted this huge Taste of Young Sydney is what it stood for. I had to remember what the acronym was. But that was where I met like all these chefs that I was like in awe of, who were mentoring the next generation of young chefs. And it's just been interesting to see how far all those people, like chefs that were on that, it's like Mitch Orr, Monty, who's over in LA, like just all of these amazing...
Oh, Monty's in Ex-Icebergs, Monty.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember so far back. But all of the female chefs that I met working on that are still doing amazing things, whether not owning their own restaurants and stuff or doing all of these incredible things. So it's been... having a mentor and being part of a community that looks after you is extremely important, I think.
Yeah. I'm curious, just early on when you were chatting, you talked about other people you admired. Do you have any other chefs that when you were starting out that you looked up to? Is there a few in mind?
That's a hard question. Yeah, there's heaps of chefs. I think... Hang on, you're going to have to...
No,
come back to that.
I asked that because I had this very visceral moment where I remember the same moment when I was at this cafe, and I remember because I had to close down the cafe by myself, and I was like an apprentice at this point, but we had to mop the veranda, and I used to play just like, I don't know, some Biggie Smalls or like Action Bronson or something, while you just get, and you're thinking, you're in deep thought, like while you're mopping, cleaning, you're always in deep thought about something. And I remember thinking, I would love to go work for like Ben Shuri at Attica, you know?
Yeah.
Like back then, this is also before I was vegan, all this sort of stuff, but my dream was to kind of go work for him. I guess I'd never met the guy.
Yeah.
You just see him through, I don't know, articles and reading about him and stuff like that, right?
I guess chefs that I looked up to is like Mark Best.
Yeah.
The first proper fine dining restaurant that I ate at when I could afford it was Mark.
Oh, really?
And it served, I just remember this like calamari dish that was cut so fine like rice that it was like perfect. And I always remember that. Other people like Carly Kwong or Peter Gilmore, all of those sort of Australian icons.
Yeah.
I guess now you'd want to work for Josh Nyland. Everyone does. But I don't know, it all changed. Like we've got so much access to them through social media that it's a different feeling to before. Because I remember being in the Claude's kitchen, I don't know what year it was, but Chewy, my boss, Chewy Lee Look, came up and said, you all have to start doing something called Twitter, like to post what you're doing. And we all thought she was mental. Like it's kind of, you know, what do you mean you have to post what you're doing in the kitchen? It was like such a bizarre concept. We're like, okay, yeah, sure. No one did it. But, you know, it changed so quickly. And the industry is all about images of food and looking. So you have access now to international restaurants and around the world, like it's all on your phone. So you can kind of click. It's very different. So I think the idea of who you look up to is so broad. But in terms of people who, you know, even the Netflix series, like they do those master series and they just give you so much detail. So you have access to things that you don't, it all comes to you quickly. So you kind of get an overload of now too much information. So you've got to sift out. So I think actually meeting someone or having a phone call with them is probably more important than anything at the moment because there's too much information. So it's having that chat to see how they can help you. Yeah. But when you're a young chef, it's always such a daunting thing to take that next step. And it's like, oh, I got to go up and say hello to someone. It's like, I remember being at the first ever time I went to the Good Food Awards and you're just surrounded by all these, like you're like starstruck, all of these amazing people. And then you're too shy to go talk to them because you're still just a baby. But it changes. And then you look around 15 years later and you're one of the older ones. You're like, how did that happen?
It's like the celebrity red carpet of chefs. Yeah, it's really funny, huh? No, well, it's just funny because I had this friend, we both went to TAFE together, and after TAFE, he decided to go straight into Sydney and go work at all these like fine dining restaurants. You know, I'll tell you the restaurant later. You tell me some funny stories. I don't want to say them. But I decided to hang around like Shell Harbour and Wollongong. So I worked at Caveau after the cafe. And I remember bumping into him. And this is only maybe a year later after we'd left the TAFE degree. And he was so broken. He was just like he was a shell of himself. Yeah. And I'm like, is this going to be me in the future? Does Sydney age you this badly? Because I'm taking it easy. Not taking it easy. Like, it's still hard, but it's like on the countryside, you're not doing the volume that you might do. There's the standard, these 2-3-headed standards aren't that in the countryside. Like the restaurant's great, but it's a very different guest, different atmosphere. So the standards are different. And I remember just looking at him going, so what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know if I want to be a chef anymore. And I was like, just like that? Like it'd been a year out of TAFE and like, that's it, you're done? And I was like, had my whole world ahead of me. And maybe we're only 20. And I remember sitting there going like, you know, why don't you just come to the country, man? Like just take it easy for a bit. You've obviously been run out because you've gone too hard, too fast. Probably drunk a couple of Red Bulls, gone for a marathon, and your heart's given out.
But look, it is a hard job. Like we go into service and we put ourselves under extreme pressure and to do things really quickly as fast as we can. Hot environments, like small cramped spaces. Like, but that's the fun of it, I guess. And it does burn you out. It's you're constantly standing up. You start to get. I always say to my chefs, "How old are you?" And once you get over 30, you're going to have to get a gym membership because you got to work on that core. Otherwise, you're going to have back pain, knee pain. Like it's kind of just. Yeah. Whenever they say, "Oh, my back's," I'm like, "Are you over 30?" Time for the gym.
Could you complain?
But it's hard.
But it's no different. But it's like, you know, obviously you have to remind people that you can't take a car from nothing to 6 gears straight away. You know, you've got to go up the gears, and that takes years of practice. You don't just get a bloody black belt. You know, it can take 5, 6, 7, 10 years to get that. But that requires just experience and repetition. You know, and there's reward in that. There's reward in that kind of growth. You know, but this is why I kind of wanted to touch on that mentorship, because if you have that first restaurant that maybe doesn't give you that energy, doesn't give you that inspiration to continue, then that will shape and change the entire industry, which is why it's nice where we're at now, where there is a bit more people considering that, whether they like it or not, that the moment they become a head chef, they also become a mentor. Yeah. You know, which is such an interesting thing. I'm kind of curious, at what point in your career did you realize that cooking, you wanted to take that seriously, that you kind of felt that fire in you and you were like, oh, I really love this now?
Well, I think as soon as I started, I realised I loved it. One of the first things, when I first moved back to Sydney, I worked at Restaurant Atelier under Darren Templeman, and his kitchen was very French, and all the terms that he used and stuff. And I walked into the middle of service for my first shift, and it just moved quickly, and I had no idea what was going on. Like it just happened like a blur, and I was like, oh. And the other apprentice there, he knew what was going on, and I'm like, if he could do it, I need to do it. So I need to like lift my game quickly, because it was a big step to move from Canberra to Sydney, and straight away we were in like a fast service, and he's yelling out all these things. I have no idea what any of these dishes are. I've never heard any of these words before, and then I realised, oh shit, like I need to like lift it if I want to make it in Sydney, or I've got to take it a hell of a lot more seriously, or like stay at that level. So it was like, okay, I'm going to jump on. And it doesn't mean that you're not having fun and you're not doing anything, but it's like, I've got to start reading. I need to like research. I've got to understand all of these terminologies. Like, what does this dish mean? Like, you've got to be, if someone asks you to do something, you don't want to look like an idiot. So I put my head down and made sure that I knew, or either faked it really well that I knew and then sort of figured it out if I, sink or swim kind of stuff. And I think it was at that moment that I knew this is what I want to do. And also, naturally, it's in your personality. You either want to be a leader or you don't want to be a leader. It just comes. And I've noticed that through mentoring lots of people. Not everyone's destined to own their own business or run their own thing. But for me, it was a natural thing. I don't think I could have worked for someone for my whole career, because I like to be in charge, and it's just a natural personality. I liked, if I was in any kitchen or in any role for a certain amount of time, I want to sort of be in control of how it goes. So that's just how it is. So I think I understood very quickly that cooking could allow you to do that. And there's so much fun, and you can sort of take your career in so many different loops and turns, and you can go anywhere in the world. You can cook any cuisine, you can do markets, you can do events, you can do festivals, you can do all this sort of stuff. So it's super fun.
It's very rewarding.
Yeah.
I was having this chat with an apprentice the other night who was complaining that his hourly wage couldn't buy him a Big Mac meal from Macca's or something like this, And I was like, I had to turn it on. I was like, man, just shut up, like, just put your head down. Like, if you really love it, put your head down. There will be a reward later, But
it's like everything, all those people that do interns in fashion or marketing or whatever, they work for free. At least we get paid to be our apprenticeship. So.
I went traveling around Europe just a year or two ago, and I'd been cooking obviously for like 13 years at this point. But while I was traveling Europe with my dad, I was still emailing restaurants if I could go stage and go work for free. Like, I love it. Like, I was happy. And I worked in this restaurant in Malta where they weren't even speaking English for the entire time. They could, but obviously that's their national, the language is Maltese, so they're going to speak Maltese. And for 2 14-hour days, I just said nothing. And they gave me a prep list. They showed me how to do something once, and I would do it until they needed it for service, and I'd move on to the next job. And that was it. And I just loved it, And I'm like, Malta was hot. It was friggin' sandy and shit, but I loved it, And even, having so much experience under me, I still enjoyed going somewhere around the world and just learning something and putting your head down. And it's still so valuable, And it's like, there is so much reward, because there's nothing like being a chef that can compare that job to almost anything else. That can take you around the world, see and do anything. And like I said, we're both doing Vivid part of, this year, and you have the opportunity to mentor people. Now you're on stage talking to people, get to share about your culture. So you have these really cool opportunities to share and connect with people through food in such a different way.
Yeah, but I think as you get older as well and become more comfortable in what your career has been and where you're going, I think you drop a little bit less of the formalities, and you understand that cooking is just a connection, a conduit, so that you can start a dialogue and open up with people. It becomes much more humbling again, I think. And that's the beauty of where food can lead you, is just to connect with people. And I think that's the most important thing, and where I'm finding I get most of my satisfaction is that it opens up doors, and you just share a meal with someone and you travel to another culture and you understand a bit of where they're coming from and how, because everyone's got their food. You don't have to be a trained, qualified chef to create beautiful dishes and do all that sort of stuff. So it's really nice that after being in intense kitchens and wearing white and doing that whole thing, you can still understand that food just connects people. It's nurtures, I guess, is the main point that I'm trying to say. So that's my favourite element about it at the moment.
I want to touch on your time at Atelier, because in all my readings, it's not a restaurant that I heard you talk about.
I was there for briefly.
Is it? Okay.
Maybe, I don't know, 6 months or something.
Okay.
But I still see Darren around with chef judging stuff, and I still see the other apprentice that works there, Mitch.
Yeah.
Like he's doing amazing things in his career. So it was short, but it was a really good sort of springboard, I guess, for
6 months in a restaurant, still like,
Yeah.
it's like dog years.
Yeah.
You know, you still get a lot of experience out of a place.
Yeah,
in 6
I started
months.
there in the pastry section, and I realised that I didn't want to be a pastry chef.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I'm terrible. I'm really, really terrible at measuring things and being accurate. And you realise that you're a really crap pastry chef if you don't do those steps. You can't fake them. So
Yeah.
I really admire pastry chefs for their patience and dedication and all of that sort of stuff, because I'm definitely not a pastry chef. I don't like being sticky, and I don't like how many pots you have to use for every single thing and
Yeah.
all of the steps. And you can't take a shortcut, which irritates me. So,
Yeah.
but I admire it.
We just caught up with the pastry chef at Benelong,
Okay.
and she was telling us about the Opera House pavlova that they do.
I've had that.
Oh my God, just making the meringues makes me sick. It's crazy. It's like, have you seen the dessert?
I've had it.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was telling us about how they make it, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. I feel like when you're a visceral cook, you don't rely on that. You know, you just cook delicious food just based off what you feel,
I
taste,
like to
smell.
cook on emotion, and
Yeah.
put this taste, and then adjust. But if you try and do that in pastry, you look at it comes out of the oven, you're like, just close your eyes, everyone.
Yeah.
That's not how it's meant to be.
It tastes good, I swear. Just blindfold yourself. Beautiful. So now jumping from Atelier, it was Claude's after that. In what direction, like Rubicon being very different to Claude's, what made you want to kind of go in that kind of fine dining direction? I'm kind of curious, because chefs now can go.
So Chewy was the only female chef in the country to have 3 hats. So
Okay,
that
great.
was like one of the things, and also it was a 30-year-old restaurant. It had the history of that restaurant was phenomenal, and I was so proud to work there and be part of the team. So Damien Pinelay and Josephine Pinelay started the restaurant, then Tim Pakpoy had it, and then Chewy had it, and it was just everyone just honoured the legacy and the culture. Like upstairs when I worked there, the pastry chef tools of Josephine Pinelay were still on the wall exactly how she left it. Like everything was just in honour of who's come before you, and who, like, honouring great chefs and what they've done, and then tweaking it and working with Chewy there. She was bringing in her cultural background into the dishes, so it was really interesting to sort of see food, like a blend between her background and French cuisines meshing together. So it was really exciting, and just the produce that you could use. So I realised that was one of the reasons for choosing Claude's, was because it was a small kitchen, number one, and also the only female chef in the country to have 3 hats, which I thought was pretty awesome at that stage. And it was really fun.
Working under a chef of that magnitude, especially someone you could readily identify with and wanted to be like that in such an inspirational way, was there this immense amount of pressure that you felt of making sure that you were good enough, or that you could represent her well while you were there cooking?
I think you had pressure from her to be good enough to do her dishes. Like, as you know, if you can't do it, to get someone else in. Like, your job was never safe, because there's such a small kitchen that if you're not good enough, then someone else gets to go to have it. So I think there was the pressure from that, but it was a different sense of it. She did a lot of research as a chef, so I had never seen someone read so many books, just endlessly sitting up, like writing recipes after recipes. Like, it was kind of fun, and that was the first time that I saw the actual connection to food and art, because we used to do a lot of sort of themed dinners where we'd get different artists or different pieces of produce, or she'd base it on a certain agreement. And I've still got some of those menus that we did, which I thought was so fascinating, that she was connected so well to art and culture, and her restaurant still has been at the top of her game, and I was really impressed by that, I think. Yeah.
But that was also your first experience with a 3-hatted restaurant. Working under a restaurant that, like you said, had been run by other chefs like Damien Pinelay and Tim Pak Choi, that legacy that you talk about. I've spoken about this with other chefs who've had to take over a restaurant as a head chef from other restaurants who've kind of built that legacy of that restaurant. When you're going through upstairs in that pastry kitchen and going through reading all the books and the recipes, what are you feeling at this point? Where are you kind of at, and as a chef wanting to take that knowledge and represent it in the best way, where do you feel as though that put you in a time and place as a chef?
No, I think I felt extremely lucky to be having part of my career in that restaurant and venue, because the history and the experience and the people that have worked, like literally chopped on the chopping boards you chopped with and used the ovens and all of that sort of stuff, it makes you feel like you're really in like a generation of chefs that are contributing to the Australian dining scene and working for and understanding where they came from and what they're doing now. Like, and I think it's really important to see the history of what's happened and how food's changed over that, over the years. I think at the time you don't realise that you're in the middle of something really important. And also, I think when I left Claude's, you didn't think that it would end because it had been so long. You know, you don't think that a restaurant just shuts, but I guess 30-something years is a pretty good time.
Yeah.
Especially fine dining went through kind of a rough period in the mid-2000s where lots of them shut and started opening up places like Bloodwood, which was a more casual interpretation of dining, but taking fine dining, all the things that we've learnt and making it more accessible to everyone. So I think Sydney really experienced a whole explosion of restaurants like this, where it was removing tablecloths, turning up the volume, cranking up, all of that sort of style. So I think only looking back do you realise how important the previous venues were, and also knowing who you work for and where they come from. I think that's something that my advice to junior chefs is that actually know who you work for. Don't just walk in with an attitude and think that you're amazing. You can learn something from everyone. That would be something that I would say, like, take it seriously. It's like I always made sure if I met anyone that I did a bit of research so I knew, so I understood who I was talking to, so it wasn't disrespectful, I guess, because Chewy came from, when she was an apprentice, was at Bank. And if you think about all of the amazing chefs,
iconic, yeah.
like you can draw the diagram of who all of them became amazing chefs. Like, yeah, and they're still doing amazing things.
That cookbook has made its way through many restaurants as well.
Yeah.
Not even just the restaurant, just the baked book.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So I think, looking back to the time when Sydney was booming in that time, and they were all just making heaps of money and all these apprentices and just coming out, and they all opened up their own venues, and then they all employed amazing chefs, and it just sort of grows. So I think that you just need to know who you work for. And actually, if you do your research and try and pinpoint, and if you want to go down specific paths so that you can get in contact with people, then you should seek it out, because you've got the ability to find out all this information. And I think it's really interesting to see the history of it, because it's food like art. It just keeps, coming round and round in its trends. Like there was that Ugly Delicious thing, 10 years ago, and now it's all gone back a bit more fine dining, and then you get all the other influences, cultural influences. That's really fun.
Yeah. My advice also would be to absolutely just read and consume information. Like, especially early on, it's like read all the books from chefs who've experienced all this, because at least you'll get an understanding. My first head chef sat me down even before I was cooking, and he put it to me in this really blunt way. He told me, if you want to be a chef, he's like, forget having a social life, forget about saving money. He's like, you're going to have more bad days than good, but if you really want to do it, he's like, it's going to be rewarding. And he's like, I can't explain it to you, but you just have to trust me,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it is. But absorbing information and reading books from other people, it's like, they've all gone through it, Like, you may as well just arm yourself with the confidence to go, that's right, I learned from this chef, this is how the best way to deal with this. Or they've mentored me to maybe stay calm in the situation and that it's okay. And so having that is important.
What Chewy used to do at Claude's with me when I was first there, I thought she was just trying to intimidate and scare the shit out of you. It's like at least once a month you'd have to go up to her office with all the ideas of dishes that you've come up with. So you knew before that meeting you'd researched so much, and then it's only thinking back years later that she was trying to teach you how to construct dishes and how to think about flavours and all of this sort of stuff, because then you can play around and do different stuff. So I think that's completely such a useful skill. And I always train my chefs here, like, the first dish that you put on the menu, you're so nervous, and you overthink it, you overwork every single thing, you add 1,000 elements into it. But then gradually, the more you do it, you just sort of get in the rhythm of it. And it's so beautiful to watch some of my chefs, how they've grown from just being so shit scared to put a dish on. And then suddenly, fast forward 2 years, they'll come to you with like a whole book of exceptional ideas, and all of them could go straight on the menu because they've just clicked, and they're like, understand how service works, understand food costs, and it's like they've just gotten in the groove. So one of my chefs here, Diane, she doesn't like to buy cookbooks. She goes and sits in the library for 2 days and she just flicks through cookbooks. And I think that's such a great way. If you don't have money, because cookbooks are expensive, library's a great option. I go to the bookstore and just photograph the pages, because then it's on your phone anyway, so you can try out new stuff. Because it's hard to like look at your computer while you're working. So, you know, it's always, but also just looking at pictures of food gives you all of these great ideas. I think that's kind of the best way to do it.
I remember hearing that you have these specific memories at Claude's, and you might be prepping, and then you have like a live crayfish call out from underneath your prep bench. What's going on here?
No, that was my friend Mitch, and one of my business partners who I originally started Bloodwood with. He would just play practical jokes all the time, you know, as chefs like to do. We're not the most serious of people all the time. We do like to have fun, but I am terrified of spiders, like an extreme arachnophobe, especially huntsmen.
Yeah.
And he would just secretly release a live marin behind me and then giggle all day as it got closer to my feet, and then slowly I'd look down and just freak out.
Oh no.
Every time I took the exoskeleton off, I'd just be like, you know, my ears crackle out of fear, because it kind of looks like a spider once you take the body off.
Yeah, it looks like that creature from Alien.
Looks like a tarantula.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to just get through your fear of prepping live things and just deal with it. I'm like, it's not a spider, it's not a spider. Well, I'm not scared of crabs. I don't know why I'm scared of spiders, which crabs are way scarier, I can understand, but it's just a fear.
So what, so he was the practical joker, he'd be pulling pranks on you?
He'd pull pranks on everyone. He'd come down in someone else's uniform and wait to see how long till they notice. Like, it's just, you've always got one of those people in your kitchen, which is fun.
Yeah. I want to just quickly chat about what it was like working under Chewy, real quick. Kind of working at that level of a kitchen, I feel as though your mindset and your brain kind of switch in a very professional sense, right? Because the standards are higher. The willingness to want to learn and the hours you're wanting to put in are very higher. So you're exposing yourself to open to change in a positive way. And working under her, I'm kind of curious as to the insights of what she was like and any kind of memories that you have.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting question, because I like working under Chewy. She's like a crazy genius with flavours and everything, but I wouldn't necessarily say that she was good at managing people or being an exceptional boss. So it was, which I took that instead of being a negative. It's like, okay, this is when I have my own place, I want to do it opposite to that. Like, I want people to feel warm and nurtured and secure rather than stressed and under pressure. So it was like, you can twist your experience to make it something that you're still learning from. So it wasn't necessarily something that I would leave the restaurant for, but I don't think she was so focused on constructing and making the dish exceptional that she'd forget how to work the human who's going to now execute it into making sure that they can do it correctly and feel like they're supported and that kind of stuff. So I think in that sense, maybe she needed a mentor to teach her how to look after staff, because I think it's one of the elements that sometimes people forget. To have like a successful venues, you need your staff to be happy and working well. They can't just be like sort of in a dictatorship of fear and like, if you can't do it, someone else can kind of situation. I think maybe she had her career too early where she didn't have that nurtureship, and she got, you know, in a full-on boy kitchen and everything was discipline. So I think that's the nice thing, that the industry's softened in a sense where you've got an opportunity and a moment now to sort of think about it. But one of my greatest assets, I think, is being able to look at someone and like, you've got your two chefs in the kitchen. This one's going to need a different way to motivate him than this one. So as the motivator and boss of the place, I can step back and say, okay, they don't all have the same, I can't treat them all exactly the same way. It's not the way that I am. I have to now get the best results out of him. Like, this guy works faster and harder if I do this with him, and this one works that way. And I think learning that, I really enjoy that. Like, it's kind of like sizing up someone, looking at them when they first start and going, okay, how can I get this person to really get in the groove? Because sometimes people need a lot of confidence to sort of build themselves up, get into roles, and other times people need more structure, like more discipline, more hours, like faster. So you've got to vary your management skills. And I think it's also just sort of stepping back, taking time to understand what each person is like, and don't always just yell at people. Like, I think every chef loses their shit every now and then. We're under pressure ourselves, and you're in the middle of service and things go wrong. But the beautiful thing is that tomorrow is another day. It all starts again. where other industries things carry on. Like we have this beautiful thing, once that's done, that service is over, fix the issue and start again. So nothing's too much. I think it sort of makes you feel a lot calmer once you figure that out for yourselves, and don't beat yourselves up about it. Just try and figure out what went wrong. Let's just carry on. So I think in terms of leadership under Chewy, I probably looked at what she did and then wanted to do the opposite.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good because I only realised that later as a chef, of kind of taking apart what people do and then what they don't do, and then kind of appreciating that. But like you said, it's one of those things you just reflect later.
Yeah, and once you see it years back, you realise, oh, she taught me so much about this, but I didn't realise at the time, or I was too upset about being stressed that I didn't see it. But yeah, there's different things, but it's all cultural, I guess. It's like there's some restaurants that just click. They have the team's part of the family. That's kind of the restaurant that I always wanted to create, which I think I have done pretty well in Bloodwood. Usually people stay for a long time here, which is nice. It's always sad when people leave, but it's the nature of life.
Yeah. So jumping out of Claude's, was this the moment you kind of go for Bloodwood? Or was there something in between here?
So the team I was working with in the kitchen, we opened Bloodwood together.
Right.
Yeah, so we jumped to here. It was a venue we were sitting at. I lived in the inner west, so did the other chefs in the kitchen, and we'd always sit at the townie down here in Newtown having after work drinks, because we'd drive from Paddington. You can't have beers there because you've got to drive home. So we'd sit here at the townie having, schooners of beer, thinking, oh, like we've just got to open our own place, like do our own thing, cook food that's fun, kind of, because your idea, I think, the concept of Bloodwood originally was from recreating sort of Claude staff meals, where all of your fun things happen, like all the dishes that you experimented and tried out and tested.
So your idea of opening up Bloodwood was to kind of recreate staff meals from Claude's. So taking the love and the passion and the flavour, but making it a bit more casual.
Exactly. So like feeding people like dumbed down versions of all fine dining food, share style, like family style meals. Like that's, the fun of it. And I think that's where food really made sense to me. I enjoyed fine dining, but it also is boring as a chef to do degustation only. I find it, I don't know, every day what's going to happen. Yeah, I find degustation only, I don't really like working in that style. I just get slightly bored. I like a la carte, where you don't know what's going to happen.
Totally.
There's a different sort of stress and excitement about it. So, and also share style food, like I can't order a whole man for myself anymore. I get, oh my God, I want a bit of that, I want a bit of that. So
yeah.
That kind of situation. So cooking food that essentially I wanted to eat rather than someone else's French menu, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the idea of Bloodwood came from the eucalyptus tree, the one that leaches the sap, the honey sap.
You've really done your research, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I find that interesting.
Yeah.
I find that interesting because it's just...
Well, it reflects the time. So I think it would be 2009 or 2008, and Dexter had just started, the
TV show.
The serial killer show.
Yeah.
And we were all watching Dexter at work. And we were bushwalking, and came across, like, it looked like someone was murdered in the bush, but it was just the Bloodwood tree, so I was like, that's a cool tree. And we were opening in Newtown, so we wanted to do something a bit botanical, which we realised later maybe blood and wood sounds a bit gruesome, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
nice.
we went with it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's such a funny interest when people find a name for their restaurants.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting.
It's hard to pick a name.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, especially when you're opening up with a few people as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. It's just like you go with something and it just becomes that.
Yeah, and then what you were saying that sometimes people call it Bollywood or something. Yeah.
People do. We get Blackwater a lot, which is the complete opposite.
Isn't that a prison?
Bloodwood.
That sounds like a prison. Anyway, so now this is kind of interesting now because you've gone from now chefing to now opening and running a business with all of them chefs?
Yeah,
all three? Yeah,
all three chefs.
And now you're kind of creating menus that are reflecting of yourself. At what point did you find the transition between being a chef to then having it click that you're now also a business owner?
It takes a little while. I think initially you're just so excited that you've opened the doors and it's your space and people actually turned up, that you're just in this adrenaline rush of wow, like people came. If I did the turnover that we did on that first Saturday, I'd be bankrupt. Like it's kind of, you're just so excited that they walked in.
But
And,
was that around Mardi Gras weekend or something?
yeah, in 2010, it was like, yeah. But I think you just realise that you need to develop systems and rules and processes and all of these things that you'd never thought about. You've got to hire the right restaurant manager, you've got to have the right wine list. Like, it's just a lot more than you first imagined. It's definitely not just about the food. We also imagined that the restaurant would be a small bistro. You know, we'd only have like one person doing bar and one person, two people in the kitchen and three on the floor or whatever. And it turns out that we need like at least double that to just service it. Like it became its own thing. And I think part of the success of Bloodwood was, rather than stopping what was happening naturally to the restaurant, it took us in a direction that it wanted to go, and we just went with it and sort of put in rules around that. So initially we didn't have any rules about like, here, if you're a table of 8 or more, you need to do the set menu, because we'd have a group of 20 come and they all want to have a couple of beers and some polenta chips, and then you'd be like, you've sat there all night. So it's like having the seating times and realizing that, you know, all of these structures are in place in all of the world's top restaurants because they need them to be in order to make enough money to survive. So it's like, you didn't think about that either. So it's kind of, yeah, I found it quite fun to sort of grow, develop rostering, all that sort of stuff. It was an interesting time because technology changed so quickly. So we had some clunky POS that was, you know, like a beast. We didn't have iPads. It was like, it happened really quickly. And still now I feel like I'm 10 steps behind in technology because you've got to know so much. There's so many programs and there's so much data now. What do you do with all the data that you have? Like it's just, it's really, before you had nothing and now you just have this overload of, you know, we had a handwritten reservations book when we first opened.
I was just talking about how romantic that idea is.
I've still got them upstairs because they're kind of beautiful. It's like all the scratchings out and all of the, like the history of it.
It sounds terrible, but I'd love to bring it back, even though I know these new systems are very good at organising. But
when the internet drops out here for a service, we have just go into complete meltdown. How do we do? Like, what are we going to do? It's like handwrite a ticket. Everything's going to be okay. But how do you do cash up? Like, it's kind of things really sped up. So you've just got to go with it. And I think you have to keep learning every single day, new programs, new information, keep moving with all the stuff that's coming out. Otherwise, you're left behind. We didn't take reservations when we opened Bloodwood because that was the style of where dining was going. I think it took maybe 6 or 7 years in, and then we changed because people wanted a reservation again before we just have a queue, which seems so stressful that we would just operate on a walk-in basis. But it used to work, and now it's like, it's coming back to where people, now I think we're up to like 20, 30% walk-ins again. So it's people's trends change and you just got to go with it. So yeah. But now it's all, you've got, no, the marketing side for me is stressful because you need to look good. You need to be able to present all your dishes and have a professional photographer come in and do all this sort of stuff. Whereas before you could kind of get away with just taking some clicks, but everyone's got reels and so that takes it in a whole nother direction.
Totally. Which is what's interesting because even like I had to learn this when after I left Yellow and I started to do my own pop-ups. That was purely a selfish ego fuel to want to almost lash out and just in a positive way of going, I just want to do my thing, but I don't have the money to open up a restaurant. So I'm just going to travel and do all these pop-ups and events and do all the dishes that I want to do that I couldn't get to do at Yellow or for whatever reason. And so I just went crazy with all these ideas. And it was only until maybe I hit my 10th pop-up that I decided I need to start actually like paying attention to the people across from me and realizing maybe what they want. Obviously, the kind of food that I was doing was such a niche that I think people were happy to come anyway, which I didn't, once again, it's another thing I didn't think about or understand or appreciate until later, but I was just doing it because I just loved doing it, you know, and I think people saw that and liked it anyway, but that kind of helped during that time. But then learning to market, you know, learning that when you're traveling, for example, to different states, when I did pop-ups in Melbourne and I did some in New Zealand, so these people don't know who you are. So how do you attract people? So now you have to sit there and read and learn and ask chefs your advice. And
as a young chef, you become your own brand as well. Like everything you do, you've got to reflect it through everything. which I struggle at, but I do all this sort of stuff to try and help build that. But I actually think it's super important, and the part of the Tasting Success program that I mentor, they teach an element in that course, which is like a media and television sort of presentation of how to take food photography. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
I would have loved to have learnt that in TAFE. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So teaching young people, even if they go out for dinner, like I take the worst photo of my dish, so I can't even post it. But it's like just being confident with how to photograph something or something like that. Like it's such an amazing skill.
Yeah, it's like Von Landers running with it now.
Yeah.
Just take shitty
wouldn't
photos.
you have loved to have learnt that in TAFE? Like how to talk
Yeah.
in front of a crowd. I'm like,
Totally.
I still can't do that at 45.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the interesting part of TAFE, is that it's like, man, I remember my first days there, you're learning how to do your cuts.
Yeah.
Your jardiniere, julienne, but they didn't never tell you how to sharpen your knife, for example.
That's very true.
And I was like, I thought there would be maybe a good whole day of teaching your chefs how to sharpen their knife, but they just never did.
No, they didn't.
And I'm like, what? Maybe I don't want in TAFE. But they'll find that. Anyway, there were two dishes I think best represent that change from going from a chef to a business owner. And they changed the way in which you started to see putting items on the menu because they're just what you enjoy and they're what reflect where you are as a chef. But then now you're starting to make decisions about dishes that best reflect the business. And those two dishes would be, one, I guess, the polenta chips and various iterations of the chickpea pancake.
Yeah.
What's going through your head, realizing now you're going through this transition, knowing that you need to make kind of the best decision of where the menu's at, but how that's going to be a good decision, not only, I guess, because it's still what you want to cook, but it's that compromise that best reflects the business.
Well, I think for me, I didn't want the venue to be known, like I didn't want people to come here just to have the polenta chips, but it was something that just always grated on me, and we'd cooked them for so long. So in COVID, I just decided, as soon as we reopened after COVID, I'm not doing it. And then I realized just people actually did come here to have the polenta chips. Like they really enjoyed it. I know some people hate them. You get sick of the flavour, but they did actually see this venue as where you come to have really nice crunchy polenta chips. And I thought, I don't want to be defined by a dish. We hate cooking it as chefs because you burn yourself and it's awkward and stuff, but it is cheap, it's affordable, it's warm, but all of those sorts of things. So I'm like, okay, my ego came in after COVID, after being in lockup and like putting food in boxes. I'm like, I want to cook a menu that we want to cook now, so let's take them off. I got so much backlash.
Oh, really?
My customers were really angry. Every single week, at least 5 people would come to the pass and say, just put them back on the menu. I'm like, I'm sick of them, we're overcooking them, they've been on for 13 years, it's time for a rest. And they're like, every single weekend. And it lasted 18 months of me literally getting asked weekly, why can't you put the chips back on? Why can't you put the chips back on? That I finally went, okay, I'll put them back on. And I don't know, there was the one last person asked, and he was really serious at the pass. He's like, just put them back on the menu. I'm like, all right.
What's the deal with the polenta chips?
Exactly. It was like a Seinfeld episode. So I'm like, sure, they're back on. So then we did a welcome back the polenta chips. You should have seen the joy of people's faces. I'm like, okay. Then I rewound. I sort of paused for a second. Well, I was an idiot to take them off. They're so cost effective as an item. They're 10 times cheaper than potatoes.
Totally.
You can make them in bulk. Like, it makes sense. And it's like, just drop the thing. Like, who cares if you're a restaurant that comes for a specific dish? So they're back on the menu and people are enjoying them. I don't think I eat that many of them, to tell you the truth, anymore. But we offer a vegan version, which is really successful, and people still come far and wide to have them. I'll take a potato any day. The chickpea pancake's another one of those dishes, because where we are in our location, and I take dietaries really serious, I like to be the venue where you can have a big group and every single person feels like they're spoiled. So the chickpea pancake's that one dish that can sort of easily be anything you want it to be, gluten-free, vegan, it's warm, it's filling, it's cheap, all of those sorts of things. So that stayed on for that reason as well, is because it's a substantial dish that people come to have. You can have it for lunch, you can have it as a snack. It's often staff meal, you just put meat on it and whatever. Like, you turn it into a million different things. But I think it's not bad to have your regular dishes. And then I thought about restaurants that have had signature dishes on for like years and years and years. Like that's all they do. Or a restaurant that just does one burger and it's like, you know, I don't have it that bad. So if I can sacrifice 2 dishes that customers want regularly come back to, then it's worth it and I can just play with the rest of the menu. So I think if dishes make you money and they're getting well received by the customers, just drop the ego of the chef and let it happen. But yeah, the polenta chips.
The goddamn polenta chips.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you've got, I remember at the Bentley Group, they had the licorice bread, Yellow for ages. Keys got their snow egg, which is their signature dessert that at some point it took off and then they briefly put it back on for a tiny bit, you know, so.
And I guess as a chef, you get worried that if you do something for too long, you won't know how to not do it anymore. Like you'll get scared that you're stuck in a groove and you won't be able to adjust. That was my changing gears sort of mentality after COVID, that I wanted to just start fresh. Like I didn't want Bloodwood just to be always the polenta chip restaurant, but here we are again.
I remember you saying,
it's not bad.
And I remember you saying to Anthony Huckstep that you have this need that when a dish becomes too good that you want to take it off as well.
Well, if it's too popular, you got to take it off. I think it just dominates, and you just cook that dish all night long. Every single customer orders that one, so it's like,
totally,
got to go.
But it's also good because I remember you saying that you want to provide the challenge to yourself that you can find a way to recreate something that can be just as good, you know, which I think is good because as a business owner, you want to be able to make sure that you're still understanding that kind of complexity of a dish and how it becomes well received and how, you know, it's kind of like a little measure of you still got it, you know?
Also, I think the flow of a kitchen, like if you're a good head chef, the whole kitchen sort of needs to be equal. You can't just have one section being completely slammed and consumed by dockets and orders and then the rest. So you've got to make sure that you write a menu that spreads it out evenly so that there's a kind of a pace that everyone can manage. Because even seasonally that happens. Like now it's suddenly clicked into colder weather. Suddenly the main section's going off and the chef's just, you know, what about you guys in larder? Like, so straight away now you've got to shift to creating dishes so that larder becomes more appealing for winter style. So it's not just ingredients, it's like what customers will order at certain times, because you need that flow across the board so that people aren't just under pressure and while the other chefs sort of stand back and watch. So that's also fun, is sort of designing a menu. You know, people think, well, the structure sort of stays the same in most restaurants, and that's probably for the same reason, that the kitchen's built in a certain way that the best flow for us is going to be this kind of way in the kitchen. So when you bring in new chefs, they need to learn that really quickly before they can start helping with menu design and understanding, because you'll often get someone comes in new and they give you recipe ideas and I'm like, have you seen our kitchen? Like we don't even have the space to do that. Like you got to, so it's, being a chef is always getting the problem, twisting it around, unraveling it, doing like a little puzzle and then putting it back together in a certain way and moving on, which is why it never becomes boring, because like you get daily puzzles. I've got today's daily issue was getting a text from the veg guy again, something you ordered isn't available. So I'm like, I got to do a new salad in about 3 hours, like, which I don't have anything for. So you got to think on your feet, because we have the beauty of the menu just being a piece of paper, so you can reprint how you want. But yeah, it is fun.
Yeah. You've now had Bloodwood for 15 years, which is a mile in its own right. What would be your best piece of advice for others, either opening or currently running in their early stages, that you could give to them for running a successful restaurant?
Okay, I think number one, you've got to be prepared for hard work. Like it's not going to be easy. You've got to take the business side of it seriously as well. Like just being a good chef and making exceptional dishes isn't going to make you survive. I think you've got to understand costing and food costs, make sure you use sensible products. Like you walk into a venue and you look at the dish and you're like, this dish, they're only charging this much, it would have cost so much more to make. Like you've got to get all those correct. You've got to have good staff. Like you've got to, it's just take a step back, think of the big picture before you go too gung-ho. I think you've also got to know your customers. Like you're throwing in an outside element here. Like where do you sit within that community that your restaurant is, or your venue, or what are you offering? What do you bring? What are your morals? Like what do you want to stick to, kind of situation? Like, so I think there's so much to look at all at once, and you've got to slowly unpack it Make sure that you align yourself with people who share your same values as you. Make sure that your staff understand all that sort of stuff. Then you've got to make sure everyone's trained, and there's so much to do. I think advice, jump in, but also know what your market rent should be, first of all. Know what all of these things should be in line. Do some research, like the government business website gives you all of these templates and all that sort of stuff, so you sort of see if you can line up all these things before you go, like what should be on a profit and loss. Like, you need to have a good accountant, bookkeeper, and like all of that side needs to work out, because you'll suddenly get to end of financial year and you've run at a massive loss and you haven't figured out why, because you're still busy and tables are turning and that kind of stuff. So I think you've got to figure out margins, and I don't know, I could go on and on and on. It's just an endless thing.
Yeah.
But I think, also Sydney's full of big venues that have backers. So if you're going to do an independent thing, make sure that you do it properly independent and don't try and compete in terms of fit out costs and look and feel. Like, I think open with authenticity and honesty, and people will really respond to that. Don't try and be too polished if you don't have, the $1 million backers behind you. And I think just be sincere in what you offer guests, and they normally respond pretty well. I think that's my main thing.
Two chefs that I admire. Well, there's a few chefs that I admire and like it changes over time. When you start out as a chef, you admire chefs for very different reasons until you grow more, and then you kind of get to understand people. But for the few chefs that I admire, yourself included, they don't have these backers, and I like that, and I really respect it. It takes a lot more grunt work, but I like that, because you're putting your heart and everything into it. It's not just being able to, or being afforded this opportunity because someone gives you daddy's credit card.
Yeah.
It's a really terrible way to say this.
I think we need more independent venues. I think we do. Like it's across the board. I don't want to see more chain stores opening up. Like,
Totally.
You don't want malls. You want independent shops, like across the board. Shop small.
Yeah. But I think, and you said this before, but everything kind of goes in this roundabout where the $1 million fit outs get even more and more and more and more extravagant to the point where we're like, I just like the mum and pop shop on the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
On a stool, eating some delicious food. And it kind of seems as though we're getting back there, because people are now starting to enjoy this kind of wine bar fit, which is basically what you've been this whole entire time, this casual eatery with just a really nice food and drink offering that you've really thought about, that you can just relax at. And you've been doing this the entire time. And it's like you saw it before it was a thing. It went more extravagant and people are going back there. And then here we are, Bloodwood, just been doing delicious food with a simple offering.
Along.
Yeah, just ticking along,
No,
I think this is what's so funny, is that it's like, this is why it's like I choose to admire chefs like this, because you've really, when you put your heart into something, you feel it. There's something there. And when you really put your heart into something, it's not because you're seeing a trend, because they come and go. It's because it's just something that you love. And when your heart's in something, it's because that's something that can be shared across everybody. Yeah. And that will always exist, which is why it's so funny. It's like, I don't know. It's a very deep thought, but when it comes...
It makes sense. It's pretty cool having a space that you can do whatever you want in it, and you don't have to have, don't have to show to a board where you're going, whatever. Like, we could shut the doors and just do a free dinner party or whatever. Like, it's nice to be truly independent and to be able to support producers and farmers who are also truly independent and are just starting out. I think that's also a really exciting thing when you're a small restaurant, is that you can begin careers of winemakers and new suppliers who are trying stuff, because you're small enough, you don't need shitloads of stuff. So it's kind of, it works, and they feel really grateful and I feel really grateful, and it's kind of, you form such a nice community that's bigger than the restaurant.
If you were to look back at Claire 15 years ago, starting Bloodwood, starting her first restaurant, what would be the I guess the advice you would give yourself back then? I know it sounds similar to the...
No, it's a hard question. I think I would never have thought that I'd still be here 15 years later. I would think that I would be completely bored by it, but I have never been bored once within the restaurant, because you do stuff outside of it that makes things like you stimulate yourself. You do events, you do mentoring, you do chef judging, you do other things, you do like private parties and all that sort of stuff. But I think, yeah, I don't know how I can answer that. What would say it again? What was the question?
If you could talk to yourself, yourself 15 years prior, opening up your first restaurant, or just, I guess, it doesn't even have to be a restaurant. Like, forget that it's a restaurant, but wanting to open up something that reflects yourself, where you are at that time, what advice would you give to yourself 15 years kind of down the track with everything you know now?
I think probably in the years that the restaurant did make seriously good money, I would have probably invested it in either redevelopment or improving this restaurant or branching out into more avenues. So there'd be more things out in, like, not necessarily new restaurants, but maybe more products and things like that, rather than just having a great time and going on lots of trips and living it up with the other people that were here. So probably being wiser in thinking, what are we going to do in 10, 15 years' time? Because I didn't think that we'd still be here in 10, 15 years' time. So it's kind of doing that, being slightly wiser with, installing new kitchen rather than going on a holiday or that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I want to finish on one last question. I used to ask this in the Roots podcast that I did before, but it's a humorous and kind of funny way to finish. And it's a good reflective question. But it's, what's the funniest or craziest time you found yourself most in the shit? Prepping as a chef, something's gone wrong. Maybe you're in an offside function. Something's just ludicrous or crazy. Even if it's one memory or two memories, maybe before Bloodwood, during Bloodwood, what's something crazy that's going on?
So many crazy things happen.
I'll tell you what, I'll tease you with one I heard was there was an incident to do with a stock pot, a hot stock pot that was put on the floor during service.
Oh, with my foot. Oh, no, I've got also a nice one when we were in the middle of a private function here. Someone hired us for a fundraising dinner, and then maybe an hour and a half into dinner, we hear this huge explosion, and 2 doors up, the building exploded.
No, seriously?
We're like mid dinner, and then suddenly there's flames flying across. There used to be a laundromat where that new apartment is now, like a kind of commercial laundry, and it just exploded. So we're evacuated, and there's no power. The restaurant's filled with smoke, and we've got to get all the customers out. All the food is on the table. All the food is in the oven. We just have to turn it all off. The police came through with the fire brigade, like, you got to get everyone out. So we just left it, and then you're sort of standing outside on the footpath, wondering, is the whole thing going to burn down now? Just watching as about 11 fire trucks were there for the whole night trying to put the fire out. And then you come back in the next morning with no power and see if there was any damage. We didn't get any water damage because they luckily sprayed that way, but pulling out food that had crisped up to charcoal that had been in the oven because they're like, you have to evacuate now. Like, literally, it was really quite eerie to come and clear a restaurant where the food just was on the table.
The next day.
Yeah. The Newtown rats would have had a feast that night because they would have run out of that building into ours where they just had all the food.
Yeah,
and then apologised to the fundraising dinner because it was like, I didn't even know. No one could pay a bill.
Oh,
there was nothing that we could do. So then we had to go and call people and say, you're supposed to donate this much money. I know you didn't get to eat anything, but will you still donate? Yeah, but that was a funny moment.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That'd do it.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
And now that's an apartment building. So the police were there for many years trying to figure out whether it was set deliberately, because it's amazing how Sydney property is. Anyway.
Beautiful. Well, I want to finish up on a quote that I think embodies yourself and where Bloodwood's at the moment. And I got in touch with Callum Boys.
Oh, really?
I did. And so I wanted to ask, as someone who's been observing restaurants from the outside, I know you're also very good friends with him, but I wanted to kind of get his insight into his perception of your growth and Bloodwood and how it's evolved and changed over time being a food writer. And he put it very eloquently, and I'm going to dodgy it up, so forgive me, Callum. But he said that Claire Van Vuuren, being able to watch her grow and see how Bloodwood has evolved. She's done an incredible and exceptional job providing a sense of place and belonging in a way that very few restaurants have in any suburb, in any city that he's written about. And there's something about that in restaurants that you don't see often, that he's applauded and loved for a very long time.
That's very nice of him.
It was very beautiful. It was very beautiful. And I want to leave it on that because I just wanted to, as a way to sum up 15 years of Bloodwood, it's kind of cool to sit across from you and to learn from you and to have worked with you and kind of been able to just be friends with you over this time and kind of be a mentor for a lot of people, for Nina and myself included. And we just want to say a big thank you. And I guess congratulations and many luck for the future, I suppose. And thank you for the work and the inspiration and being a mentor, being a good mentor and wanting to kind of pass on everything. And yeah, I just wanted to say a big thank you for everything and continue. And
that's amazing. Thanks, Eli.
we love you.
They're very lovely. And thanks to Callan. We got to form the trivia team where we won the gold medal a couple of months ago.
Oh,
so
really?
We got to challenge it again. So.
Oh, there you go.
But
well,
yeah, thank you.
Were you in the same trivia team? You both
Yeah,
were?
me, Callan,
Yeah.
Maddie Hirsch, and then Nina, his partner. We took out the gold at Porcine.
Oh, who'd have thought, huh?
Yeah.
There you go. Back at it again. Well,
But yeah,
thank you.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. You really are great at doing this.
No, you are. Stuff it. Stop it. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Done.